Thank you. So I experienced a pretty major contrast, like some folks in the room did around the election. I personally know Donald Trump quite well, and it was just a really contrasting experience. So I kept asking myself, how could this possibly be working out for me? Over and over, and I am in my vacation home in Sedona for the next couple months. I'm like hiking my dogs and meditating, and I received an inspiration to tell a story in the hot seat, which I don't usually do, I just ask questions. And when I was 19, I gave away all of my TVs, and I didn't watch TV for 6 years. And through a random circumstance of events, I saw 2 hours of TV during this time. Gary Zukav on Oprah, and then I turned the TV on again like 3 weeks later, and it was Gary Zukav on Oprah again. And it was the same episode. And it was an illogical period of time for that to happen. So I go on Amazon, first book I ever ordered on Amazon is like $99. And I started reading every spiritual book available. Moved to Sedona in 2002 and was really isolated. So I started looking up all these websites for these spiritual authors, and they were terrible. It's like the worst thing that had ever been produced. So I got A Rocket of Desire. I thought, I want amazing content and writing exercises and audio and video. This is 2002, so this is stuff that didn't exist that much back then. And I was super high and happy. I thought, people would pay for this. So do a subscription portion. I could do Don Miguel Ruiz was number 1 on my list, Gary Zukav number 2. I had never heard of Jerry Nestor at that time, and Deepak Chopra, and on and on. And I'm hiking and I'm thinking of these ideas, and they're lighting me up. And then on the third day of the highest high, I realized there was only a couple problems. Number 1, I didn't know how to build this technology. Number 2, I didn't know anybody who knew how to build this technology. And number 3, I didn't know any of these authors. So I got really sad for like a day. And as I was getting ready to go out that night...
All right, now before you go further, we just want to play with this because the sequences that you are describing are what we are talking about the momentum growing. In other words, the rampage was happening within you. You started out with no resistance, only desire. And in the absence of resistance and only desire, it began moving along. And then you brought your rational, reasonable, objective mind into it and introduced resistance to the equation that was already moving along quite well. And then you felt really sad because you were resisting a desire that had already gathered some momentum. You following that? And then
that night, I went to go to the cafe to go write in my journal, and I'm putting on my makeup, and I almost am going to start to cry because I'm so sad about this. And I look in the mirror and with volume said, Andrea, if God wanted you to be doing this, I don't even talk that way, but then you would be doing this, so you need to let this go. But like yelled at myself in the mirror, and I felt the weight of it lift off of me. That night, I go to the cafe, meet a guy, really handsome guy, and he happens to be visiting on a Chautauqua to Sedona, and he's a tech mogul in the Silicon Valley. I end up telling him my idea, and he says, well, my team can build that whole thing. That's completely no problem. You just have to get the authors. So I go, okay, no problem, except for I don't know the authors. Long story short, start dating that guy. I have other very successful companies. He has very successful companies. We forget all about this idea. He takes a job on the side for fun as a consultant on Arnold Schwarzenegger's campaign. I know this is going somewhere. And so we're at the inauguration, Schwarzenegger's inauguration, and the top political consultant on that campaign comes up to him and says, hey, I have another project for you. And this is a very busy tech guy, but he's like, anything you want. He says, I'm Don Miguel Ruiz's top Nagual, and Don Miguel wants to expand his technology basis, and he wants to expand his business into that. And Brian goes, you're not going to believe this, but Andrea has this whole company. A week later, Don Miguel hires us on the spot. We build this whole technology out. Fast forward, crazy circumstances and events happens where Gary Zukav ends up reaching out to me, not knowing that I build this company.
Doing a good job of explaining the pieces along the way. We gave you a very general theory. She's filling in the pieces of it with something that she was living. And are you putting it together? Yes.
So I was on The Apprentice. They asked me what my favorite non-business book was, and I said Heart of the Soul. So through a crazy circumstance of events, we end up reaching out to them to ask them for some free books. They say, we love Andrea. We watched that whole season because we read this interview and we want to meet her. I say, I'm bringing something for you, but I don't tell them what it is. I bring them a whole build-out of what their website could be. They hire my company on the spot. They put me on their board of directors. And then they invited me to come with them to Oprah. I went backstage, front row on Oprah, met her. She personally endorsed our product. She let us use her picture and an essay she wrote on our sales page, and it was the craziest full circle moment of like, oh, when I'm just bipping along and living my happy life, amazing things happen.
As they should.
That's right. So I do, yes, because the universe has my back. And the crazy thing about it was, as I was meditating around.
So you never again have any reason to ask how it works, because all of those very simple components were known by you and lived by you and demonstrated by you and received by you and comprehended by you. And isn't a formula a formula?
It is. I have a follow-on question quickly, which is, I didn't have any resistance about that because I didn't care. So it is like a little Tupperware with stuff.
Wait.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, really?
Yeah, I know. You're right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can't just make stuff up.
You're right. I know how it works. Right.
It doesn't matter why there was no resistance. It's only important to acknowledge that there was no resistance. But if you don't acknowledge the difference between a very memorable time when you know you didn't have any resistance, then you're not ever going to be able to recognize what resistance feels like. You didn't have any resistance because you didn't have any resistance. You didn't have any resistance because you hadn't thought about it in opposition, because it was a new thought. So we'll go along with that. Maybe you didn't have any resistance because it's a new thought, and maybe it's more difficult not to have resistance when there has been some thought. But as long as you know the difference between what resistance feels like and what non-resistance feels like, and then, oh, you're really going to like this. It's not just non-resistance produced that. In other words, those were big results that you got, and everyone loved hearing about all of that. And we know that was like lions. In other words, that all felt so great. But we want you to, just for a moment, even while we're here together doing this, feel all that satisfaction that was happening before those manifestations. Say it better. All of those incremental ongoing manifestations that led to increasingly bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until explosive manifestations. But the process is always the same, starting somewhere where you can feel the momentum. So if you've got a topic where you can't get any momentum, you've got to break it down into more and more general terms, because you got to get somewhere where there's no momentum before you begin again. Isn't this a wonderful conversation? And if you jump into anything in the midst of contradicted energy, you're going to have a hard time and probably not get anywhere close to where you want to be. So haven't we discovered a new intention to somehow get back far enough to the beginning of something, far enough that it's non-resistant in nature, back to what my inner being knows about it, back to the vortex version of it, back to maybe even the components that I put into the vortex, but back before there's any resistance in it. This was a big conversation. Did you get it?
It reminded me to remember, because I have other very similar huge examples like that, of I really don't know what's in the vortex. I never would have, like right now, I keep thinking of a specific topic or a specific business.
Okay, so go general enough. I know that what's in my vortex is power. I know that what's in my vortex is a feeling of intoxicating clarity. I know that what's in my vortex is a feeling of unabashed cooperation, universal cooperation, thus the word power. I know that what's in my vortex is the components of everything that matters to me. I know that what's in my vortex is fairness, because law of attraction always is, and promise of more, because that's the way the law of attraction works, and food for thought that is so nurturing and nourishing to me. Life force. I know that life force is in my vortex. I know that meaty things to focus upon are there. Now, let that momentum fill in a little bit. I don't need to know the details of the vortex. I know the power of the vortex, and I believe that the vortex is going to begin evolving, and I'm going to be witnessing its evolution. In other words, this vortex is far from complete in manifested form. It's ideas that are going to mature in my mind. Woo! I am the maturation process. I am the realizer of it. These are the components. And just like the kernel of corn knows how to become corn, my vortex and its kernels know how to become, but I get to witness the expansion and evolution of it along the way. And maybe I won't even recognize it until I see it. That's the surprise and delight.
Yeah, there was a pervasive, overwhelmingly awesome feeling of it not even be surprising when it happened. I was like, oh, of course we're going to do that. Of course we're going to go see Don Miguel Ruiz, right? Of course.
Would you agree with this? Manifestation on the heels of that flowing energy, bigger, bolder than any thought before. What we're trying to say is it does get bigger and more exciting as it moves along. It just does. There's plenty of excitement along the way, plenty of enthusiasm along the way, plenty of insights and new thoughts and first-time thoughts and those coincidences that aren't coincidences at all. Those moments when you just want to shout at each other, can you believe that that happened? Do you believe that? And 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 look at that. And oh man, is the universe good. And oh, isn't it wonderful what the universe knows? And isn't it wonderful how blessed I am? And along the way, isn't your sense of worthiness and empowerment growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing too? And isn't that what it's all about? Isn't it about those moments? And so this vortex that we were describing generally now feels like empowerment and certainty and sureness. It feels like life-changing and life-giving. It feels like dynamic people. It feels like great ideas. It feels like life-changing things. It feels like world-renowned events. It feels like things that much of the world is looking for. It feels like me joining forces with source energy to be the giver of what so many are reaching for. It feels like me being in complete harmony with all that I am. It feels like me being flexible and free. It feels like me feeling good all of the time, not just some of the time. It feels like me going from being interested to being really satisfied, to being curious, to being hopeful, to being optimistic about something. It feels like the blessings of the universe are raining down around me. And I can have this great big net, which is sort of overwhelming as all kinds of stuff on all kinds of subjects just falls into my net. And I spend so much time sorting, to being so good at it that my net is more specific. And what falls in is so exactly what I was looking for just now.
Yeah. It's amazing. Should I say the other one?
Whatever you want.
Okay. Well, I think you might have more from this.
What we want from you now is you're right there, right up against your vortex. You're right there in this moment, vibrationally in sync. And a lot of others are too, as a result of the conversations that we have accumulated here. And so now from here, can you feel like the statement of desire to put out into the universe is not one that has any doubt in it? That's the thing that most people think, well, now that I'm here, I'm really going to go for the gold. I'm really going to go for the big one that is all full of doubt, and then I'll just drag my car with my bus for a few hundred miles. Or you could just stay happy about where you are and proclaim to the universe, I'm ready for whatever you know I'm ready for. And I'm going to spend my time in readiness preparation. I'm getting ready to receive, and I'm not going to, because you said it. I don't know exactly what's in there, and I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. So I'm not going to make any demands of you that are going to mess up my vibration. That's the whole point. I'm not going to make the specific demands of you that are going to cause me to get into some doubt or memory mode of something that went wrong. I'm just going to stay open to this uniquely new and entirely different unfolding of a wonderful thing.
Yes, I am. I love it. I've been repeating that story over and over to myself on the hikes after I got that download. And another one that's like 30 seconds long. I got a call on the morning of the finale of The Apprentice from people I do business with that said, we just signed the exclusive contracts for the World of Warcraft, so by proxy, you automatically get all of the sales rights for the merchandise on World of Warcraft. I didn't even know what that was. I go to The Apprentice that night, and this woman comes and finds me in the bathroom and says, my boss is here and wants to offer you a job. So I go out, he's this handsome young guy, he works for Microsoft, And he says, I want to offer you a job. And I go, oh, are you going to pay me $2 million a year? I'm being very playful. He goes, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm